So have you listened to the podcast at all? I love asking people that because everybody's like, no,
but my friends
that's okay.
I have meant to all week, and I've been traveling all week, and I can't believe I'm here and haven't listened to it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our favorite part of the week. It's time to listen to Sounds of Health, where we share the stories, people, and resources that help others to improve their physical, emotional, and financial well-being. We're coming to you live on Facebook a day early. Usually we do this on Wednesdays, but our week was a little jumbled up this week. I'm your host, Dave MacNiven, and today I'm excited to welcome our guest, Harmony Koelmel. Harmony is a licensed and certified professional midwife, a registered nurse, and she currently works as a hospice nurse supporting families at end of life. Harmony, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. I know you are coming in from out of town for a little while, so I'm glad you were able to fit us in.
Yeah, that's exciting to be. It's exciting to be here.
Great. So usually we start with a little bit of an icebreaker question that we've developed, and that is, what makes you happiest these days?
Well, I've been traveling a lot and quite a bit. Just got back from California, then came here. I live in Florida and going to Japan next week.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're probably seeing a lot of different weather patterns and climates. Is it typically really hot down in Florida right now?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's so much cooler here, even though everyone keeps talking about how hot it is.
This has been the hottest we've had for a while. I haven't experienced the past few days like this in, I think, a while. So
we're excited for the reprieve of being here.
I bet, yeah. Do you know what you're getting yourself into when you go overseas?
Well, in Japan, every person that we talk to prepare us warns us of the heat. But we've been checking daily, and it's hotter in Florida. So
so you're prepared.
I think
you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Great. So in your introduction, obviously, there are a few things that you have done in your career. But why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got started, what your story is, where you're from, and things like that, and then what brought you to the current path that you're on?
Okay. And how I got started in midwifery.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. I started, I was in college actually for technical theater, sound,
Awesome.
and lighting design as a minor interest. And during that time, my college roommates were expecting a baby, and I was invited to the birth. And while on full scholarship for the theater, I attended that birth and literally fell to my knees sobbing at the birth of this baby. I was 20, and the next day went back to school, and they were talking about gels and light colors, and I was like, "But don't you know
no longer interested?
That there's a baby? There are babies being born all over the world right now." And I just I couldn't be present. I couldn't be there. I met with the dean that day, and I guess he saw something in me. I was on full scholarship, and I had 2 semesters left to go. And I was just like, I have to quit. And he was
wow.
And he said, yes. He gave me his full support, and I did, and started midwifery school in the next semester.
That's amazing that it happened for you just like a bolt of lightning, it sounds like. You just kind of got hit by it and followed that passion. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. It was an incredible journey, and doing the midwifery school is how I did it. There's multiple ways in the United States, multiple paths, and the path I did was a academic and apprenticeship model. Okay. At the same time, and so it's a 3-year academic program combined with a apprenticeship model, working as a midwife under someone. And so by the time I was done with school, I had attended hundreds of births. Yeah. And managed. There's parameters. So you have to catch, they say, at least 50 babies as a managing student. And so very prepared by the time I was done with school. And then, if I may, so then I started a tiny home birth practice, very tiny, I had two or three clients, as we call them, rather than patients, and but it was not much going on, and I
Right.
lived way out in the country. So I was by a spring, and I was sitting on the spring head one day and kind of just like, what's next? What do I do? How does this like work and move and be
Right,
functional?
yeah.
Like, how do I go into the adult life of this? And it just like, the thought of like jump in the river came to me. And so like metaphorically, that was the message, but that's what I did. I jumped into the river. And that night I got a phone call from some woman who I didn't know and who has become one of my dearest friends. And I picked up the phone and she said, "What would you say if somebody said you could have a birth center?" I was like,
"Oh, wow.
A birthing home," she said. And I was like, "What's a birthing home?" Because we called it a birth center. And she was on a mission. The birth center in Sarasota where she lived was going to close. And she just couldn't see it happen.
Oh, wow.
And somehow she sought a midwife out and found me, and I said, "Well, I have my first baby is coming, who just turned 20 last week, and is still in my life." And I said, "Well, I have a first time mom that's pregnant. It's due." So first time moms often go a little late. I was like, "I'll come visit after this baby is born." And that baby, they called me that night. And that baby was born super quick. And I went that weekend and never left.
That's amazing. So where were you in school when this all started to happen?
I had finished.
So
I was
where was that?
I went to school at the Florida School of Traditional Midwifery in Gainesville, Florida.
Okay.
Which was an incredible experience run by, you could do a whole show on the history of midwifery in the United States and in Florida and the women who made that come back because midwifery was kind of lost for a while due to that's a whole nother story.
Okay.
But these women brought it back, and it was the oldest birth center on the East Coast of the United States, affiliated with the school.
Okay. And then so when you got out of that, you said you had 3 clients. How did they find you? How did all of that happen?
I worked in the local birth center as a student, and so I was kind of like in the community. People knew each other. It was in Tallahassee, a small community. So I went to school in Gainesville and commuted from Tallahassee.
And I don't really know much about what that whole thing looks like. So when somebody says, "Okay, I would like you to be the midwife for my child," what is that like? Are you there with them through what sort of process, or are you in the hospital with them? How does that work?
So there's out of hospital midwifery. So a midwife, a licensed midwife in the state of Florida, every state has a little bit different parameters.
Yeah.
But in the state of Florida and in states where midwifery is recognized and integrated, which are many, you pick. It's an either or, and so if you're picking a midwife, it's all inclusive midwifery care. All the referrals that are needed, all the lab tests, everything that would be done in an obstetrician's office would be done at a midwife's office. The difference being it's low risk, healthy, normal pregnancy. If someone were to become high risk, then they would transfer out into a doctor. Okay. And so some OBs, obstetricians, have midwives in their practice as part of the practice, and some midwives have an OB in their practice that kind of oversees or is the referring doctor.
Gotcha.
So someone would come to me and they would have their full prenatal care, all of the routine testing, everything that's done, no matter where you would choose to go. And then at the time, as pregnancy progresses, you see the midwife. It's every 4 weeks, then every 2 weeks, then every 1 week, and then they're on call for labor. And in my case, when I had the birth center, I owned a birth center for 13 years. They would either have chosen a home birth or a birth center birth, and sometimes a hospital birth was planned, and we would accompany them there. And then sometimes people would transfer to the hospital during pregnancy because they became high risk, or transferred during labor because of blood pressure or just whatever the reason that was making it now more appropriate to be at the hospital.
Gotcha.
And we would go with them.
And the midwife is really the point person for all of that.
So it's a medical provider. Sometimes people, there's another word maybe, or another role, a doula.
Yeah.
And people often confuse those. And a doula is a non-medical professional, and they do a training and it's kind of like a hired best friend that knows everything about birth.
Gotcha.
But they're not medically responsible for anything. Whereas a midwife has medical training and is medically responsible for the well-being of the mom and baby.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't know that. And I've heard those terms kind of used, but didn't really know what the definitions were. Mm-hmm. So that's great. So you go into having this center now, right? So this kind of just came out of nowhere. You said the person that called you is a good friend of yours now, but you didn't know her at the time?
Didn't know her. She came with the birth center. And so it was a beautiful situation. The midwife who had owned the birth center had a baby and was trying to make it all work. And it was just too much for her to, it's a lot to maintain.
I'm sure.
With a brand new baby and all of that. And finally she made the choice for her family to stop. And that led to closing, because it's just not easy to sell any practice necessarily. So she eventually got to the place of closing the doors. And my friend Carmela she was the childbirth educator there and was like, that can't happen. And went on a mission. And so when I took over the birth center, which we did in a very beautiful way, where I was in my early 20s, I had no money. I had a pickup truck with no power steering and no AC. And everything I owned, I fit in the back of it when I moved to Sarasota. And the midwife I bought the center from, Heidi, she was about to end her practice and had a new baby and wasn't going to have an income. And I had no money to offer, but nobody wanted to see it end, And so I supported her for 3 years and with a percentage of what I made. And she supported me by allowing for such a supportive situation to unfold.
That's amazing.
And the birth center continued, and I got to walk into a practice that was already operating. I interviewed with every single client, and almost all of them stayed, and just hit the ground running. And my first baby came within 10 minutes of them arriving.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So the birth center is a physical location, correct?
Yeah.
So how big is this, and how many people were involved in it?
So it's a big, beautiful house, kind of like where we're sitting now.
Yeah.
That's converted into a home-like. It's like a home-like setting is the idea, and we specialized in water birth, and so most people chose to have a water birth, or even came to us with that interest in mind. And the hospitals I don't know of any in Florida, it might be mistaken at this point, but that offer water birth. You can labor in the water. And that's true in most places in the country. There's not a whole lot of water birth going on in the hospital. So people would seek out midwives sometimes just for that purpose, looking for water birth. So that became kind of my specialty. And so it's a big, beautiful, like antebellum home. We were in a courtyard with 3 homes facing each other. One was yoga, one was acupuncture and massage, and one was the birth center. And then we had a little cottage called the Honeybee Cottage that we did classes out of.
That's amazing.
Community outreach.
And how many people were involved in the birthing center? Did you have a staff?
Yeah. So usually on average about 12 employees that were birth assistants, administrative staff, and childbirth education, lactation consultant. We would do in-house prenatal visits, an hour-long prenatal visits. And I'd always tell people, like, I think everybody should have midwifery care, and that's not a bias. I mean, it's my perspective, having been in the field and seeing like the best obstetrician, and there are some great ones, is going to be really busy. And the most frazzled or a midwife is going to have more time. And so that alone, just that one little piece makes all the difference. When I think of like now these people who I caught when they were born are coming up to be the age to have a baby themselves.
Right, yeah.
And the thought of them like not having someone spend so much time with them and being like a young girl, like a young woman, like brand new pregnant with all the questions. You don't even know what your questions are.
Yeah.
And
true.
so
Yeah.
when someone's like, any questions? Okay, gotta go.
Right.
Then it's really hard to know, to get those answered.
Yeah.
And with midwifery care, we spend, I know what your nickname is, what your relationship with your mother is, how long, what your fears and anxieties are, what calls you out of those anxieties and into your strength.
Yeah.
And so by the time we're in labor together and we've gone through all these visits together, and then I've had the honor of being with families 7-8 times,
right?
For multiple babies,
Yeah.
or siblings, sisters having babies, family members having babies. So I'm like the family midwife, and knowing a family that intimately, and then being with them in the most vulnerable, intimate, and strengthening time of the growthful time of their life is
Right.
so amazing.
Yeah, I can certainly see the value in all of that.
Yeah.
So you owned the birthing center for 13 years, you said?
Yeah.
So during that time, you also had your own family.
I did.
So did you utilize a midwife for yourself as well?
I did. I used, yes. So I had a midwife for my first baby, and had a home birth. I had my son in my bedroom in a tub, and then she had multiple people due at the same time, because everyone that was due at the same time as me in my practice when I announced my pregnancy.
Yeah.
Went to my midwife because she chose her, so I'm going to choose her. So they left my practice and went to her, and so she ended up having I think 4 babies the day my son was born.
That's unbelievable.
But she stayed with me, and she sent a backup midwife to 2 of those other people. And then as soon as my baby was born, she's like, "Can I go?" And she went to another birth, and my best friend, who was a midwife that was covering my practice, came to be with me, my postpartum. She lives here. I'm here visiting her.
Yeah. Very nice.
And then she covered my practice with my second baby, and with the intention of being at my birth. But he came so fast that we did it by ourselves.
Oh, wow.
He was born in 45 minutes from my first contraction to birth.
That's
and
wild.
She didn't make it in time, so me and his dad caught him ourselves. But
That's amazing.
Which is not something I recommend people plan to do, but it's so exciting to have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So at a certain point in your life, you were just surrounded by babies.
Yeah.
Your own and all of the ones in your practice.
For a very long time.
And you said the first one that you were the midwife for is now 20?
Yes.
Okay. So within those years of doing all of this, how many babies did you help to deliver?
I lost count of the exact number because my roles switched, as I became a preceptor, a teacher to midwifery students, and learned to sit on my hands, but I was the managing midwife, whether I was physically catching a baby or not.
Right. So you were involved.
About 1,000 babies.
That's amazing.
And and many times the other parent would catch the baby.
Yeah. Gotcha. So then what happens next with the whole transition to what you're doing now with working for the hospice?
Yeah. So now I'm a hospice nurse, and it was a long, as you mentioned, I had my own children, and navigating that, navigating having children while practicing, and not just being on call and going to a birth for maybe 40 hours and not knowing if I'm going to be at my children's birthday party and all these things to navigate all of that, but also own a business of any kind and have employees that were all women of all the age range from early 20s to postmenopausal and pregnant and everything in between, and then managing pregnant women.
Right.
And there's a lot going on.
I'm sure.
And so it was a lot. And I got to a place in my life where I just decided, I was like, I want to be content doing dishes and like not doing so much, but just being and being home with my kids and knowing that I'm going to be. And so I started like working towards selling my practice and was actively in that path and about to get married with the goal of being completely having my practice be have changed hands in a very similar way to the way I was I received it before my wedding, and so I ended up in the end closing the practice, and so I closed the practice, and during the time that I was practicing, one very a birth I attended that was just. Amazing and tragic and beautiful. A baby that was had a congenital heart defect and was not compatible, like couldn't live, and we didn't know whether the baby would pass while pregnant or after, how long the baby would live, and the parents chose after checking all their options and making sure they weren't missing anything to have a home birth and to be with their baby as long as she lived. And so hospice was involved with that. Yeah. And I navigated all that and put all that together to make sure it was as supported as possible so they could have that experience and not have a bunch of politics and red tape and things go on that they had to navigate. And so she had her baby at home. The baby passed at home 4 hours later. It was beautiful, sad, everything. It was everything. And that always stuck with me, always will stick with me. But it was in my community working with hospice. And after that, I started volunteering with hospice. And that led to deciding I wanted to work in hospice. And luckily, I've never worked with a baby again. And as a hospice nurse, it's mostly elderly people. But it's such an interesting and similar dynamic. Like one of the things that I love about it was a big leap because I worked with low risk, healthy, pregnant women, and now these many people are at the end of a disease process and they're on medications and so I had a lot to learn. I couldn't possibly know all these diseases or all these medications. And so I've had to learn a lot of new things. But the family dynamic and the change from the transition in life and acceptance and surrender and learning to I'm going through this process and it hurts and I have to, and I got to roll with it and finding what's natural in it. And there's so many similarities in showing up and finding the parents of the person or the wife or the, child of the adult child. There's everybody's born and everybody dies. Well, all the people.
You're dealing with the two most intense experiences in what we experience, right? So it's birth and death.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't surprise me that you found those similarities in those two things. Yeah. Because they're such intense moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so you really kind of found that through an experience you had in that career, but you were able to kind of close up the practice and then transition into this new role.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. And so how long have you been doing that for with hospice?
I've been officially working with hospice for just over a year. And I volunteered for a few years before then. Yeah. And so it's still I'm just starting to feel like I'm not new at it.
Gotcha.
And but I am. And
yeah, I mean, hospice care is so crucial and important. I've had my own experience with that with my father, who was there, the one here in Connecticut in Branford. And it was, the hospital experience when he was going through his illness was very difficult. And when he decided to make the move to hospice, he didn't last very long at hospice because I think he was really trying to hold on for so long. When we did get there, though, it was just such a beautiful experience. And the people and the staff, they were so supportive. And since then, that was 24 years ago, actually yesterday. Since then, I've seen it with some other family members and friends. And it is such an important part. It's just such important work for people to help them through that transition.
Yeah, it's really, so in midwifery, like what I found myself doing most was educating and advocating. And we actually do not have good statistics in this country for birth and for outcomes. And so we being like the maternal mortality rate is not good in this country. And so there are a lot of interventions that can happen and do. And so we would advocate, I would teach people like what their options were just so they knew. And so what I found in hospice, like at being an observer of the medical field, I have complaints, and so, but working in hospice, I mean, sure, there's little things like I hate the charting, but there's, but I've been so impressed with the support system and the network that they have. Like I go as a home visiting hospice nurse, and when I leave, I know I can call a social worker, I can call a religious person that can be affiliated in any way, like whatever supports these people. I can call a massage therapist, a pet therapist, a music therapist, a volunteer to come and sit and play cards, and it's all covered. And
That's
to
amazing.
have that kind of support, and we tried to provide that kind of support.
Yeah.
And it came out of my pocket, like at the birth center.
Sure.
Like I knew all that needed to happen, but it wasn't covered by insurance or Medicaid or anything. And so we just did it anyways and worked on a skeleton budget to make it happen because it was the right thing to do. But they actually make it happen. It's part of the infrastructure, and it's so wonderful. And it's
for the clients,
for the client and for the employees to work in a place where you're so supported and know that it's not all on you. And then to know I'm going in there and I can't do everything for this person.
Right.
I'm doing everything I can, and they have a lot going on, and I'm about to leave. And maybe their 90-year-old wife is their sole caregiver. And I know that someone's coming to give them a bath later, and someone's coming to bring a dog for them to pet. And it's just so amazing.
That really is amazing. And it's such a gift. So there is support for the staff as well, because I can only imagine that you dealing with just those intense emotions and the heartbreak could be trying for yourself, right? I mean, you probably carry some of that with you. What do you do in order to kind of stay healthy in that regard?
Yeah, well, personally, I mean, I have support with work. I can call the social worker myself, those sort of things, and they have a lot to offer. But there's also, for myself, like I have set up, I met my husband in a communications workshop. So we have a fantastic foundation for communication, and he is my rock and my support. Yeah. And I know that, and I've learned personal responsibility. So I also know, like, not always on top of my game, but I also know, like, when I need something, it's my responsibility to ask for it.
Sure, yeah.
And so if I'm feeling really frazzled or like I had a hard emotional experience, and then I come home and I'm short about things with my husband, I can like check myself and be like, wait, I've had a hard day. I need you to be with me for a minute. I can't listen to you download your day because I'm not there yet.
Right. And also instead of just assuming he's going to know what you need.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a healthy outlook for all of us when it comes to communication with our spouses or family members or anyone really that we interact with in the world.
I'd say that is the main and most, like, if I look at previous relationships and my life before, I'm 47 now. So like looking at my life before, being able to be responsible for my own experience, being like 100% responsible for my own experience is probably what makes the biggest difference in my life and my health. And not that I'm always there.
Of course. You're
I'm
human.
Definitely not.
Right.
I also have 2 teenage boys, and that you can ask them. I'm not. But I endeavor to be, and I have an accountability partner with my husband. And our friends. Many of our friends come from that. We've either talked about where we met enough to they've done it too,
Right,
or we met them there too. And so we have a lot of similar tools when it comes to communication.
That's great. That's great. I'm sure the teenage boys can be trying at times. I have that myself. So that can be challenging, to say the least.
And it's amazing. We homeschool.
Completely amazing. Do you really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can't be easy.
It's not, but it is, like, the grind of getting to school and getting home from school and all of that. That's so much. And then doing all the school things at home. And now we are like, we wake up when we wake up, and we, and school sometimes it looks very academic. My husband has a PhD in chemistry, and so he teaches these. Their dad has a PhD in mathematics education. So like they get some very formal education, but also like, I know that education is nuanced, and them like going to the grocery store by themselves and buying the groceries is education, and knowing how to get the right change, knowing how to manage the grocery store.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And that's like real life, and better than some of the things they would learn in school.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for sure. So now, do you have a goal for where you want to go with? Do you expect that you're going to stay in the hospice, or where do you see yourself going from here?
Yeah, I used to have lots of goals and endeavor for big things, and saw that potential and knew I could achieve all those things, and did achieve a lot.
Yeah.
With that like desire to like be content doing the dishes and such, I kind of dropped those in a really beautiful way, and I feel right now, and that might change, but right now, like I feel very content working for someone instead of being the employer, and I'm really grateful that I found an incredible place to work that is everything I described, and I'm not like, I have to always check myself to not want to like get into more managerial roles, or like,
because that probably comes naturally.
It comes naturally, and I see, and I've run a business, so I see like the pieces, and I'm like, oh, well, this could, and I'm like, but it's okay, I don't have to do it. I can mention like that I, so I feel like this is probably my landing pad, and then teaching, being available. I teach CPR, and I'm a lactation consultant. So I have all this information and knowledge, and I don't know if it will, as my babies start having babies, I don't know how easy it's going to be for me to stay out of it.
So you might find yourself back in that. Yeah.
I've also worked in other countries, Haiti for one, in Colombia. Haiti is a place that, as a midwife, I've brought students there. I love it. And working in other countries in that capacity, I could definitely see myself doing that in my retiring years.
That's amazing.
And there's an incredible place in Haiti that makes that I can't wait to get back to. I haven't wanted to go lately. I haven't been since before COVID. But
what brought you there in the first place? How did that happen?
There's a birth center, if I can mention it,
Sure.
Mama Baby Haiti, and they serve hundreds and hundreds of Haitian women there for free.
Oh, wow.
It's completely donation based, not from the Haitian women that are being served, but from people that are supporting the birth center to happen. And that place, I mean, if anybody ever wants to give something to something that's making a difference, that is the place to do it. I've been there. And we were there, no lights, like delivering babies in the dark with headlamps, and just incredible. And the people there, the hearts of these people. So I had the opportunity, there's an externship in midwifery school. You can go and do and work, get experience in other countries. So I went as a student, I went to Colombia myself, and then as a preceptor, I brought students to Haiti.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And they pay to be there, and that helps support the birth center, and they get experience, and cultural experience, and also birth experience.
Sure.
So what they're doing there, and like women, if women end up in the hospital in Haiti, they have to pay to get their baby out of the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And if they don't have the money, their baby can't leave. And it's tragic. And at the birth center, they can arrive and have full care and leave with support and not pay a dime.
Wow.
And so that is where I see myself doing midwifery, is in places like that. If I go back to it, I don't know. I don't feel I could talk all day about it, and I'm definitely impassioned.
Right. Yeah, I can tell.
And it also is like something I've gracefully let go.
Okay, gotcha. Well, you never know where life's going to take you.
For now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's great. Now, do you have any things that you practice yourself in order to maintain health, or what your individual health journey is like?
Yeah. So, once a year I go, I've missed a year or two, like during COVID, but once a year for, I think it's been 8 years, I go to do a 10-day silent meditation, Vipassana meditation. Yeah. And, having even just done that, even without, I don't have, so the idea is after doing that, you do have a 2-hour daily meditation practice. Mm-hmm. I don't do that routinely. My husband does without fail ever. Wow. He never, and that is also a practice, having someone in my home who has such a practice and seeing the results of that. That is huge for our life. So his practice is a support to me, and then supporting his practice as well, like finding time with our kids and everything, that he gets his 2 hours in every day. Right. And so I join him, but having done even just one 10-day, like what changes that made in my life. So the idea in Vipassana is like is about accepting things as they are, and not having aversions or cravings, or recognizing when you do, and just noticing them and letting them be without grasping or trying to make things different. And so spending 10 days in silence with that concept going changed the way I operate. And it creates an awareness.
So is this a 10-day retreat? Like you go somewhere to do this?
Yeah, they're all over the world. There's Vipassana retreat centers all over the world. My husband's a children's teacher for Vipassana. And so you can go anywhere in the world. It's there's no cost. They actually won't accept money. You can donate after you've sat an entire course, so you're there receiving in knowing that everything, every bite of food you're receiving, everything that's happening is because someone received benefit from this practice and then gave so that somebody else could receive benefit. So it's a pay it forward sort of thing. And so I have done that, and I'm sorry, I got distracted. Like going there, like after you sit a 10-day course, if you want, with zero pressure, you can then give whatever amount you want, but they actually prefer that you come back and serve a course. Oh, wow. There's volunteers there, like cooking in the kitchen and setting up cushions.
And is everybody in silence?
Everybody's in silence. The volunteers, like while you're in the kitchen for functionality and such, you can talk, and they can talk. But while you're there, you show up, and you once silence begins, you don't talk again until the buffer day at the last day. Then there's talking. They break noble silence, they call it. And so then you talk to each other during that time to kind of have a buffer before going out into the world after 10 days in silence.
I can only imagine.
And if you have a practical question, you can go to the manager and be like, I need soap, or something.
Gotcha. Wow, that sounds amazing.
And then, I'm sorry, there's also teachers there, or assistant teachers. So if you have a question about your practice and what's going on and your understanding of what's happening, or you're having emotionally a difficult time or a profound time, you can discuss that with the teachers as well.
So you can communicate that way. Okay.
And there's a discourse every night where they do a little teaching to put things in perspective.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I can only imagine that's a heck of a reset for you. So that's I've never heard of that, but that's really incredible.
Yeah, so that's a big thing. And then we garden. We have a food forest in our little 1/4-acre house. Yeah. About 40 fruit trees. We spend a lot of time outside.
Very nice.
With the garden and the fruit trees, and family. And then we I cook a lot. I like to
cook. Oh,
cook.
you enjoy cooking?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure that your family appreciates that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been just a great conversation, and I'm glad you were able to fit us in for a brief time on your trip here. I think that there's definitely so much that we can talk about. I know we're on a limited time today, but I want to thank you for joining us and for taking the time to talk to us about all of the things that you've done. Is there a way that, I don't know if there are certain clients you're looking for or a way that people could reach out if they felt the need to talk to you, anything like that?
Well, thank you for inviting me, but it's been a lot of fun. And I don't have a website anymore.
Yeah.
I have social media. I have been very accessible for a long time and always had a cell phone in my pocket at being on call, and now I don't. So
That's awesome.
You can find me on social media, but I sometimes don't answer my phone. I often don't answer my phone.
Gotcha. Social media is the way if
Yeah.
anybody wanted to find you.
Yeah.
And we'll be sure to post that in our social as well.
Okay.
So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to everyone if you're paying attention on Facebook Live for joining us. We appreciate you listening to Sounds of Health. If you're here to listen to Harmony, I encourage you to go back and listen to some of our prior episodes. We've had some incredible guests, and we're really only getting started. We're going to keep this going, and we appreciate you helping us to spread the sounds of health. Thanks, everyone, and you have a great day. Sounds of Health is brought to you by Nutmeg Insurance Advisors and recorded at the offices of Nutmeg Advisory Group. The podcast is produced by Jason Carubia and Dave MacNiven with music by Rob Hames. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your support means a lot to us, and we appreciate it when you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you know someone who you think should be a guest on the show, please email us at SoundsofHealthPodcast@gmail.com. Each week, we help you move the needle toward better health by spotlighting the stories, people, and resources that inspire and motivate others, and we are just getting started. Help us share these sounds, and don't keep us a secret.